Ambassador Crickstow adjusted his breathing apparatus as he entered the diplomatic chamber aboard the neutral station orbiting Kepler 442b. The human delegation had requested this meeting after their recent admission to the Galactic Council, and frankly, most species were curious about these newcomers who had somehow achieved faster-than-light travel in record time. The humans looked so harmless. Soft pink skin without natural armor. No claws, no venomous sacs, no electromagnetic discharge capabilities. Their ambassador, a small female named Sarah Chen, smiled warmly as she greeted the assembled representatives from dozens of worlds. Her eyes crinkled at the corners in what humans called happiness, and Crickstow found it oddly disarming. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah said, her voice melodic and gentle. "We're honored to join this galactic community and learn from your accumulated wisdom." The Vorthon representative, General Thex, shifted his massive frame. His species had conquered 17 systems through brutal warfare, and he studied humans with predatory interest. "Your species achieved interstellar flight remarkably quickly. Most civilizations take millennia to develop such technology safely." Sarah's smile never wavered. "We're natural problem solvers. When we set our minds to something, we tend to find a way." Ambassador Yilnith from the aquatic depths spoke through her translation device, creating rippling harmonics. "Your psychological profiles are fascinating. Our xenobiologists note that humans form emotional attachments to almost anything, even inanimate objects. This seems inefficient." "We call it empathy," Sarah replied. "It's helped us work together even when we come from different backgrounds." The assembled delegates exchanged glances. Empathy was not unknown in the galaxy, but most species reserved it for their own kind. The idea of extending it broadly seemed naive, almost childlike. Dr. Zenkarath, the insectoid hive queen's representative, clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "Your species lacks natural weapons. How did you survive your evolutionary period without claws, venom, or natural armor?" Sarah paused, and for just a moment something flickered behind her eyes. "We learned to use tools, and we learned to work together in ways that made us stronger than the sum of our parts." "Tools," General Thex rumbled dismissively. "Most species use tools. Yet few achieve what yours has in such a short time. We might be a little more creative with them than most," Sarah said quietly. The session continued with standard diplomatic pleasantries. The humans presented gifts, art, music, literature, and samples of their cuisine. Everything seemed delightfully primitive yet charming. Their music made several delegates emotional. Their visual art showed remarkable creativity, and their food was surprisingly complex for such a young species. As the formal meeting concluded, Ambassador Crickstow found himself genuinely impressed. These humans seemed like they would make excellent junior partners in galactic civilization. They appeared gentle, creative, and eager to learn. Perhaps they could be guided into useful roles, maybe as mediators or cultural ambassadors. But as Sarah Chen gathered her materials, she mentioned something almost offhandedly to Dr. Zenkarath. "I noticed your people's ships use crystalline power cores. We experimented with similar technology early in our space program, but we found fusion more reliable for long-distance travel." The hive representative paused. Crystalline cores were among the most advanced power systems known to galactic science. For humans to have not only discovered them but surpassed them suggested a level of technological sophistication that didn't match their humble presentation. Sarah noticed the hesitation and smiled that same warm smile. "Oh, we tried lots of things before we figured out what worked best. We're very persistent when we want something." General Thex leaned forward. "What other technologies did you experiment with?" "Well," Sarah said thoughtfully, "antimatter was promising but too volatile for our liking. We had some interesting results with zero-point energy extraction, but the containment systems were too complex for practical use. Fusion just seemed more straightforward." The chamber fell silent. Antimatter and zero-point energy were theoretical concepts that only the most advanced species had even begun to explore. Yet this small, soft human spoke of them like failed cooking recipes. Ambassador Crickstow felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Your species developed these technologies naturally?" Sarah tilted her head, still smiling. "We develop everything naturally. When we need something, we figure out how to make it work. It's just who we are." As the human delegation departed, the remaining ambassadors sat in stunned silence. General Thex was the first to speak, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. I think we may have misunderstood what we're dealing with. Dr. Zenkorath's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of deep agitation among her people. Their fusion reactors? I scanned them during the meeting. The energy output is 3 times higher than our most advanced systems. Ambassador Yilneth's water tank bubbled violently, and they spoke of it as if it were nothing special. The truth was beginning to dawn on them all. The humans hadn't presented themselves as primitives because they were primitive. They had presented themselves that way because they thought everyone else was primitive. To them, the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations were like children playing with toys they barely understood. Krixtal's breathing apparatus wheezed as he processed the implications. We need to contact our respective governments immediately. As they prepared to leave, each delegate carried the same terrible realization. They had just welcomed something into the galaxy that might be far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. The soft-smiling humans who spoke of empathy and cooperation had casually mentioned technologies that could reshape or destroy civilizations, and they had done it with the gentle patience of adults explaining simple concepts to children. 3 days after the diplomatic meeting, emergency sessions were being called across the galaxy. Ambassador Krixtal found himself in a secure communication chamber, participating in a classified conference with the highest levels of galactic intelligence services. Fleet Admiral Gorthax of the Dominion Navy materialized as a hologram, his scarred face grim. Our technical analysis teams have been working around the clock. The human ships we scanned during their arrival have some disturbing features. The holographic display showed detailed scans of human vessels. To most observers, they looked sleek but unremarkable. The Admiral highlighted specific sections. These aren't exploration ships, he continued. Every single vessel in their diplomatic fleet can convert to military configuration in under 6 minutes. Their cargo holds contain retractable weapon systems that would make our dreadnoughts look like children's toys. Director Yexha of Galactic Intelligence leaned forward, her serpentine form coiling with agitation. More concerning is what we didn't detect. Our sensors show massive empty spaces in their ship designs, but our best technology can't penetrate whatever shielding they're using. They could be carrying anything. Krixtal's chest tightened. Surely you're overreacting. They seemed so peaceful, so eager to learn from us. That's exactly what worries me, Admiral Gorthax replied. A species doesn't develop that level of technology without conflict. Their empathy might be a survival trait from being the most dangerous predator on their world. Dr. Veltari from the Science Consortium materialized as another hologram. I've been analyzing their biological data. Humans have something called persistence hunting. They don't have the speed to catch prey, so they simply follow it until it collapses from exhaustion. They can run for days without stopping. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. There's more, Dr. Veltari continued. Their sleep cycles are artificial. Natural humans require very little rest and can stay alert for extended periods that would kill most species. They've deliberately limited themselves to 8-hour rest periods because, according to their cultural data, working longer makes them cranky. Director Yexha pulled up additional files. We've been monitoring their public communications since they achieved spaceflight. They have something called fiction that's particularly revealing. Stories about their heroes always involve someone vastly outnumbered, facing impossible odds, and winning through stubbornness and creativity. Fiction tells us about their values, Admiral Gorthax noted, and their values seem to center around never giving up and finding ways to defeat superior enemies. Krixtal reviewed the cultural files with growing unease. Human entertainment was filled with stories of ordinary individuals overthrowing empires, defeating gods, and refusing to surrender, even when facing extinction. Their heroes were often described as monsters who fought other monsters. Look at this, Dr. Veltari highlighted a section of data. Humans have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. They glorify being underestimated. And here, Director Yexha added, another saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. They see inaction in the face of perceived injustice as moral failure. Admiral Gorthax stood, his massive frame casting shadows. This species doesn't just fight when threatened. They fight when they think something is wrong. And they've just entered a galaxy where slavery, territorial conquest, and exploitation are common practices. The weight of realization settled over the assembled intelligence officials. Humans weren't just technologically advanced. They were ideologically incompatible with the current galactic order. Their empathy wasn't weakness. It was a weapon that compelled them to fight for others. "There's something else," Krixtal said quietly. "During our meeting, Ambassador Chen mentioned that humans are natural problem solvers. What if they don't see the galaxy's current conflicts as unchangeable facts, but as problems to be solved?" Director Yex's scales rippled with fear. A species that refuses to accept defeat, has technology beyond our understanding, and feels morally obligated to fight injustice wherever they find it. And they've been smiling at us like we're children, Admiral Gorthax added grimly. Dr. Veltari brought up one final piece of data. "I found something in their historical records. Humans have a concept called proportional response, but their definition of proportional is unusual. When attacked, they don't just fight back, they eliminate the threat entirely. They have a saying that the best defense is a good offense." "They've been at peace for how long?" Krixtal asked. 67 years, Dr. Veltari replied. "The longest period without major warfare in their recorded history. Our analysts initially thought this showed they had evolved beyond violence. What do you think now?" Admiral Gorthax inquired. "I think they've been preparing for something bigger than anything they'd faced before. Us." The emergency session continued for hours, but the conclusion was becoming clear. The galaxy had just welcomed a species that was not only capable of reshaping the balance of power, but was morally compelled to do so. Their gentleness wasn't naivety, it was confidence. They could afford to be kind because they were secure in their ability to destroy anyone who threatened what they cared about. As the session ended, each participant carried the same terrible knowledge. The humans weren't joining galactic civilization to learn from it. They were studying it, understanding its weaknesses, and preparing to fix what they saw as problems. And given their track record of solving problems through persistence, innovation, and overwhelming force, the galaxy was about to change whether it wanted to or not. Captain Marcus Webb of the human vessel, Gentle Persuasion, received the priority transmission while conducting what his crew called a cultural exchange mission in the outer spiral. The message was from Ambassador Chen, and its contents made him smile in a way that would have terrified anyone who truly understood humans. "Priority Alpha 7, he announced to his bridge crew. "We have a situation developing in the Kepler system. 3 Vorthan battle cruisers are blockading the mining colony on Kepler 442c. They're demanding tribute from the human settlers there." Lieutenant Sarah Kowalski looked up from her navigation console. "Tribute, sir? That's just slavery with extra steps." "My thoughts exactly," Captain Webb replied. His voice carried that particular tone that humans used when they had decided something was unacceptable. "How long to reach the Kepler system at maximum burn?" 18 hours, Captain," reported Chief Engineer Chen Lu. "Though I should mention we're running Dark Ops configuration. If we need to move fast, I can push the engines to specifications that might surprise our new galactic neighbors." Captain Webb's smile widened. "Outstanding. Signal the diplomatic immunity and cultural ambassador to rendezvous with us at coordinates Tango 7. Tell Captain Rodriguez and Captain Kim that we have an educational opportunity." Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, General Thex himself commanded the blockade from his flagship Iron Dominance. The human colony below had been establishing itself for only 6 months, and he had assumed they would be easy prey. Humans seemed so cooperative and peaceful in their diplomatic encounters. "Any response from the colonists?" he asked his communications officer. "Yes, General. They say they need to check with management before they can comply with our demands." General Thex growled with satisfaction. "Typical prey behavior. They're buying time while they figure out how to surrender properly." What he didn't know was that management was a very specific term in human colonial operations. The message had gone straight to the Colonial Defense Network, which had immediately classified the situation as aggressive interference with human civilians by hostile alien force. The response was swift and decisive. 18 hours later, long range, sensors on the Vorthon ships detected 3 vessels approaching the system. The ships appeared on scanners as simple human civilian craft, broadcasting identification as diplomatic and cultural exchange vessels. General, reported the sensor operator. The approaching ships are requesting communication. They identify as human diplomatic vessels. Excellent, General Thex replied. Perhaps they're coming to negotiate the tribute properly. Put them through. Captain Webb's face appeared on the main screen, still wearing that gentle smile that had become humanity's signature in galactic affairs. General Thex, I presume? I'm Captain Webb. We understand there's been some confusion about the status of our colony. No confusion, General Thex rumbled. Your people have settled in Vorthon territory without permission. They owe tribute for the privilege. I see, Captain Webb nodded thoughtfully. And if they refuse to pay this tribute? Then they will be removed and their resources claimed for the Dominion. Captain Webb's smile never wavered. That's an interesting perspective, General. I wonder if I might offer a counter-proposal. Speak. You have exactly 1 hour to withdraw your forces from this system. After that, we'll be forced to resolve this situation through alternative means. General Thex's officers looked at each other in disbelief. 3 small civilian ships were threatening a Vorthon battle fleet. You cannot be serious, General Thex snarled. You are outnumbered, outgunned, and your ships are civilian vessels. Do you think we're afraid of diplomats? Oh, General, Captain Webb said softly. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not diplomats. We're problem solvers. The transmission ended, and General Thex burst into laughter. Did you hear that? They think they can threaten us, maintain position. When their hour is up, we'll show them what happens to species that don't know their place. But his sensor operator was looking at his displays with growing confusion. General, I'm getting some unusual readings from those human ships. What kind of readings? Their energy signatures just changed, sir. Massively. And they're unfolding somehow. On the screens, the 3 civilian vessels began to transform. Hidden armor plating emerged from what had appeared to be cargo sections. Weapon systems that had been disguised as sensor arrays rotated into position. The ship's energy output increased by orders of magnitude, revealing power systems that dwarfed anything in the Vorthon fleet. What in the name of the void are those things? General Thex whispered. His tactical officer's voice cracked as he delivered his report. General, those aren't civilian ships. I don't even know what they are. Their weapon systems are unlike anything in our databases. Energy readings suggest they could vaporize our entire fleet. Captain Webb's voice came through the communication system again, but now it carried an undertone that made every Vorthon on the bridge step backward instinctively. General, we gave you an hour out of politeness, but I should clarify something about human nature. When we tell you that something is unacceptable, we're not opening negotiations. We're giving you one chance to correct the situation voluntarily. You're bluffing, General Thex stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. General, Captain Webb replied, and his smile had become something altogether more predatory. Humans don't bluff. We make promises, and I promise you that if you don't withdraw immediately, what happens next will become a cautionary tale told throughout the galaxy. The transformation of the human ships was complete. Where 3 simple civilian vessels had been, there were now 3 instruments of war that radiated such concentrated lethality that the Vorthon battle computers couldn't even calculate odds of survival. 30 minutes remaining, General, Captain Webb announced pleasantly. I suggest you use them wisely. For the first time in his military career, General Thex found himself facing an enemy that he knew, with absolute certainty, could destroy him completely. The humans hadn't been negotiating from weakness. They had been giving him an opportunity to avoid destruction. And from the way Captain Webb was still smiling, that opportunity was rapidly running out. General Thex stared at the tactical display showing the 3 human vessels, his mind racing through possibilities. In his long military career, he had conquered 17 systems and subjugated dozens of species. He had never retreated from an inferior force. But something primal in his combat-hardened instincts was screaming at him to run. Analysis report, he barked at his tactical officer, trying to maintain some semblance of command authority. General, our computers can't even classify their weapon systems. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases. Their hulls seem to be made of materials that shouldn't exist, and their power output suggests they're running on technology centuries ahead of ours. How is that possible? They only achieved spaceflight recently. Lieutenant Commander Vex High at the communications station looked up nervously. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human colony below. Put it through. A middle-aged human man appeared on screen, wearing simple work clothes and speaking with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. General Thex, this is Colony Administrator Johnson. I understand you've met our problem resolution team. You're what? Oh, Captain Webb and his colleagues. They're very good at their job. I should mention, though, that they're what we call our gentle option. General Thex felt his blood chill. Gentle option? Administrator Johnson nodded pleasantly. The diplomatic corps handles situations where peaceful resolution is still possible. They're trained to solve problems with minimal collateral damage. Very considerate people. And if they can't solve the problem, well, then we call in the Colonial Marines. But honestly, General, I'd rather avoid that. The Marines tend to be less conversational. The transmission ended, leaving the Vorton Bridge in stunned silence. The humans were claiming that these impossibly advanced warships represented their diplomatic solution. General, the sensor operator called out urgently. I'm detecting massive hyperspace distortions. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Dozens of human vessels appeared throughout the system, each one different in design but clearly military in nature. They didn't announce themselves or make demands. They simply took positions that created a perfect sphere around the Vorton fleet. Captain Webb's voice came through the communications again. General, I apologize for the company. Word of your situation reached our colonial defense grid, and they insisted on providing backup. You know how it is with family. We look out for each other. General Thex counted the ships surrounding his fleet. 67 human vessels, each one radiating the same impossible energy signatures as the original 3. His tactical computer had given up trying to calculate combat probabilities and was simply displaying error messages. This is impossible, he whispered. No species builds fleets this large without anyone noticing. Oh, we didn't build these ships, Captain Webb replied cheerfully. These are just the ones that happened to be in the neighborhood. The actual fleet is much larger. How much larger? Well, let's just say that what you're seeing represents about 1% of our mobile assets. We tend to be thorough when it comes to protecting our people. The implications hit General Thex like a physical blow. Humans hadn't just achieved advanced technology. They had industrialized it on a scale that dwarfed galactic civilization. Every gentle, smiling human ambassador had been backed by military might that could reshape the galaxy. General, his communications officer reported with a trembling voice, we're receiving messages from Dominion Command. Similar situations are developing in 43 other systems. What do you mean? Human diplomatic vessels have appeared wherever our forces are engaged in what they call aggressive actions against civilian populations. They're all making the same request for withdrawal. General Thex realized the scope of what was happening. This wasn't a localized incident. Humanity had simultaneously appeared throughout Vorton space, politely asking them to stop their conquest campaigns. The gentle species that had seemed so eager to learn from galactic civilization was casually demonstrating that they could end any civilization they chose. 10 minutes remaining. General, Captain Webb announced. I should mention that after this time expires, the decision moves to someone with less patience than myself. Who? The Colonial Marines I mentioned. They're already in system waiting for my signal. Unlike the diplomatic corps, they don't really do negotiations. General Thex looked at his tactical display one more time. His 3 battle cruisers, pride of the Vorton fleet, were surrounded by forces that could turn them into particles without breaking formation. More terrifying was the realization that the humans had been planning this response long before the first diplomatic contact. They had studied galactic civilization, identified its flaws, and prepared solutions. Their empathy wasn't just concern for their own colonies. It extended to every oppressed population in the galaxy, and they had the power to act on that empathy. All ships, General Thex commanded, his voice heavy with defeat. Prepare for immediate withdrawal from the system. Excellent choice. General, Captain Webb replied, his smile genuine and warm once again. Safe travels. And General, You might want to review your territorial policies. We humans are natural problem solvers, and we've noticed that a lot of problems in this galaxy seem to stem from aggressive expansion. As the Vorthan fleet began its retreat, General Thex understood that everything had changed. Humanity hadn't joined galactic civilization as junior partners or eager students. They had arrived as the galaxy's new teachers, and their lessons would be enforced by technology and military might that made every other species look like primitives playing with sticks. The gentle, empathetic humans who spoke of cooperation and understanding were the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever encountered, and they were just getting started. Throughout Vorthan space, similar scenes were playing out as human problem solvers politely, but firmly informed various military commanders that certain behaviors were no longer acceptable. The age of casual conquest and exploitation was ending, replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history. Accountability enforced by beings who genuinely cared about justice and had the power to impose it. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of the Vorthan withdrawal incidents. Representatives from every major civilization gathered in the Grand Chamber on Nexus Prime. Their usual diplomatic composure shattered by reports flooding in from across the galaxy. High Chancellor Mordoon called the session to order, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries of galactic politics. We are here to discuss the human situation. In the past 24 hours, human forces have appeared in over 300 systems, all making similar demands for the cessation of what they term aggressive actions against civilian populations. Ambassador Krickstall rose from his seat, his breathing apparatus working overtime. Chancellor, we need to understand what we're dealing with. The humans didn't just demonstrate superior technology. They demonstrated complete intelligence penetration of our communications, movements, and military positions. Senator Yilneth's aquatic tank rippled with agitation. My government's analysis suggests the humans have been monitoring galactic communications since before their first diplomatic contact. They knew exactly where every conflict was occurring and had forces positioned to respond simultaneously across thousands of light years. Impossible, declared General Thex, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. No species has that kind of coordination capability. Dr. Zenkarath's mandibles clicked in the pattern that indicated deep concern among her people. Our scientists have analyzed the human vessels. The technology gap isn't evolutionary, it's revolutionary. They're using principles of physics that we haven't even theorized. It's as if they've had access to a completely different branch of scientific development. High Chancellor Mordoon gestured for silence. We've received a communication from the human government. Ambassador Chen wishes to address this assembly. The chamber fell silent as Sarah Chen appeared via holographic projection, still wearing her gentle smile and speaking in the same warm tone that had initially charmed the galactic community. Honored representatives, she began, I understand there's been some concern about recent events. I wanted to clarify humanity's position on certain galactic practices. Ambassador, High Chancellor Mordoon interrupted, your forces have effectively blockaded multiple sovereign systems. This is an act of war against dozens of civilizations. Sarah's smile never wavered. Actually, Chancellor, our forces have prevented acts of war against civilian populations. We haven't fired a single shot or damaged any property. We've simply asked aggressive military forces to reconsider their actions. By threatening them with overwhelming force, General Thex growled. General, we gave you an hour to withdraw voluntarily. When dealing with bullies, we've found that speaking from a position of strength tends to encourage more reasonable behavior. Senator Yilneth leaned forward in her tank. Ambassador, your species has concealed the true extent of your capabilities. This violates the protocols of first contact. Actually, Sarah replied thoughtfully, we've been completely honest about our capabilities. We told you we were natural problem solvers who tend to find ways to get what we need. We mentioned that we're very persistent and that we've learned to work together effectively. We even explained that we're empathetic and feel compelled to help others. Dr. Zenkarath's translator struggled with her rapid mandible clicks. You presented yourselves as a peaceful species. We are peaceful, Sarah said, and for the first time something hard flickered behind her eyes. We haven't conquered anyone, enslaved anyone, or demanded tribute from anyone. We've asked aggressive forces to stop hurting innocent people. That's not warmongering, that's peacekeeping. The chamber erupted in protests and demands, but Sarah continued speaking in her calm, reasonable tone. We've spent the last 67 years preparing for this moment. Not because we wanted to conquer the galaxy, but because we knew we'd eventually encounter civilizations that had normalized behaviors we find unacceptable. Slavery, territorial conquest, exploitation of weaker species. These aren't political differences to us. They're problems that need solving. You cannot impose your morality on the entire galaxy, High Chancellor Mordoon declared. Sarah's smile became something altogether more complex. Chancellor, we're not imposing anything. We're offering a choice. Civilizations can either evolve beyond aggressive expansion and exploitation, or they can be helped to evolve. But the current system, where might makes right and the strong prey on the weak, ends now. And if we refuse? General Thex demanded. Then you'll discover why humans don't lose wars, General. We don't fight for territory or resources. We fight for principles. And principle-driven humans with unlimited technological resources tend to be very persuasive. Ambassador Krixtal stood slowly. What do you want from us? Simple, Sarah replied. Stop attacking civilian populations. End slavery in all its forms. Abandon territorial expansion through force. Begin treating weaker species as partners rather than prey. Basically, start acting like the advanced civilizations you claim to be. And in return, we'll share our technology, our resources, and our knowledge. We'll help you solve problems that have plagued the galaxy for millennia. We'll work together to explore new frontiers and expand the boundaries of what's possible. We'll be the partners we initially presented ourselves as. The chamber fell silent as the ultimatum sank in. Humanity wasn't demanding submission or conquest. They were demanding civilization behave in a civilized manner, and they had the power to enforce that demand. How long do we have to decide? High Chancellor Mordoon asked quietly. You've already had thousands of years to figure this out on your own, Sarah replied. But we're reasonable people. You have 30 standard days to begin implementing changes. Our monitoring systems will track progress, and our response teams will assist with any difficulties you encounter. Monitoring systems? Senator Yilneth asked. Oh yes, we've been watching for quite some time. We wanted to understand the galaxy before we decided how to help fix it. The observation period is over. The improvement period begins now. As Sarah's image faded, the assembled representatives sat in stunned silence. The gentle, empathetic humans who had seemed so eager to learn had revealed themselves as the galaxy's new authority figures. They hadn't conquered through force, they had conquered through moral superiority, backed by technological supremacy. And the most terrifying part was that they were still smiling, still offering friendship and cooperation. They genuinely wanted to help, and they had the power to ensure that help would be accepted whether the galaxy wanted it or not. 25 days had passed since humanity's ultimatum, and the galaxy was transforming in ways no one had anticipated. Reports flowed into the Galactic Council from every corner of known space, painting a picture that defied all previous understanding of how civilizations changed. Admiral Corthes of the Hegemony Fleet stood before his command staff, reviewing the latest intelligence reports with growing bewilderment. Explain to me again how the Andorian slave market simply disappeared? Commander Yexitar consulted his datapad nervously. Sir, according to our sources, human cultural exchange specialists arrived 3 days ago. They didn't attack or threaten anyone. They simply began offering the slaves jobs at triple the wages they would have earned as free citizens in the Andorian system. They bought the slaves? Not exactly, sir. They offered the slavers fair market value for immediate emancipation, plus consultancy fees for transitioning to legitimate employment practices. Most slavers accepted because the humans were offering more profit than they'd make in decades of traditional slave trading. Admiral Corthes rubbed his temples. And the ones who refused? The humans expressed sadness about their decision and mentioned that they'd return with alternative solution specialists if needed. Apparently, that was enough to convince the remaining holdouts. Similar reports were arriving from across the galaxy. The Vorthon territorial expansion had stopped entirely, not because of military defeat, but because humans had appeared at border conflicts offering better terms to disputed populations than either side could provide. Entire systems were requesting human mediation, rather than risk being on the wrong side of humanity's sense of justice. Dr. Zenkarath was in her laboratory, studying footage of human problem solvers in action, when her research assistant burst in with disturbing news. Doctor, We've analyzed the human intervention in the Glixtar rebellion. The results don't make sense. Explain. The humans didn't take sides in the conflict. Instead, they arrived with prefabricated infrastructure, medical supplies, and something they called education packages. Within a week, both the rebels and the government forces had stopped fighting and started cooperating on rebuilding projects. Dr. Zenkarath reviewed the data with growing alarm. They solved a 3-century territorial dispute in 1 week. It gets worse, Doctor. The education packages contained technical specifications for technology that made the original disputed resources irrelevant. The rebels and government forces are now working together because the humans showed them how to create abundance instead of fighting over scarcity. This was happening everywhere. Humans weren't conquering civilizations. They were making conquest obsolete by eliminating the reasons for conflict. Their approach was so systematically effective that it bordered on horrifying. Ambassador Krixtal found himself in an emergency meeting with his government's top strategists, trying to comprehend the speed of galactic transformation. In 3 weeks, reported Intelligence Director Kolnas, human intervention has prevented 14 wars, ended 17 ongoing conflicts, and eliminated resource scarcity in 32 systems. They're not even using military force. They're just fixing things. How? They arrive with solutions we never considered. Desert planets get atmospheric processors. Overpopulated worlds get orbital habitat construction. Resource conflicts disappear when they introduce replication technology. They're solving problems that have existed for millennia, as if they were simple engineering challenges. Krixtal stared at the holographic displays showing human activity across the galaxy. What do they want in return? That's what's terrifying, sir. They're not asking for anything. They're giving away technology worth more than entire civilizations, and their only requirement is that recipients use it responsibly. Meanwhile, in the deepest levels of the Galactic Council headquarters, High Chancellor Mordoon was receiving reports that made him question everything he thought he knew about power dynamics. Chancellor, reported his aide, the Hierarchist Alliance has formally requested human mediation in their caste system conflicts. They're requesting mediation from a species they were planning to subjugate? Yes, sir. Apparently, the humans demonstrated alternative social organization methods that increased productivity by 400% while eliminating class distinctions. The hierarchists are describing it as revolutionary social engineering. High Chancellor Mordoon realized that humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had made themselves indispensable not through force, but through competence. Every civilization was discovering that human solutions to age-old problems were so effective that refusing human assistance meant accepting permanent disadvantage. The communication from Ambassador Chen arrived precisely at the end of the 25th day. Honored representatives, Sarah said, her image appearing in the council chamber with that same warm smile that now sent chills through experienced diplomats. I wanted to update you on recent progress. Ambassador, High Chancellor Mordoon began carefully, your people have been remarkably active. We've been helpful, Sarah corrected gently. When we see problems, we try to solve them. It's just our nature. Your solutions are comprehensive. We like to be thorough. We've found that half measures often create new problems, so we prefer permanent solutions. Senator Yilnith leaned forward in her tank. Ambassador, civilizations that have accepted human assistance are reporting technological and social advances that should take centuries to develop. Time is relative, Sarah replied. When you have the right tools and approach, problems that seem complicated become much simpler. We're just sharing what we've learned. General Thex, who had remained silent throughout most recent meetings, finally spoke. What happens to civilizations that can't adapt to your improvements? Sarah's expression became thoughtful, and for a moment, the assembled delegates saw something behind her eyes that made them remember that humans were predators who had evolved by solving the problem of survival on a hostile world. General, in our experience, everyone can adapt when given proper motivation and support. We're very patient teachers, and we've found that students learn better when they understand that failure isn't really an option. And if someone refuses to learn? Sarah's smile never wavered, but something in her tone made every representative in the chamber step back instinctively. General, we've been solving problems for our entire existence. Resistance to improvement is just another type of problem, and as I've mentioned before, we're very persistent when it comes to solving problems. The 30-day ultimatum wasn't really an ultimatum, the delegates realized. It was humanity's polite way of giving civilizations time to voluntarily accept help before more direct assistance became necessary. And given what they had accomplished in just 25 days of gentle intervention, no one wanted to discover what humanity's definition of more direct actually meant. 1 year after first contact, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Ambassador Krikstal stood in the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperation Center, watching ships from hundreds of worlds arriving for the first Interspecies Innovation Conference. The vessels moved through space using human-designed traffic management systems that had eliminated the danger of collision while tripling the efficiency of interstellar commerce. The irony wasn't lost on him. The center was built using human construction technology that had reduced the building time from decades to months, powered by human energy systems that had made resource scarcity obsolete, and designed using human social engineering principles that had eliminated the territorial disputes that had plagued galactic politics for millennia. Quite a view, isn't it? Sarah Chen approached, still wearing that gentle smile that had initially deceived everyone about humanity's true nature. Ambassador. Krikstal nodded respectfully. I was just admiring the efficiency of your improvements. Our improvements, Sarah corrected gently. Humans didn't do this alone. Every species contributed something valuable once we helped remove the barriers to cooperation. Krikstal gestured toward the bustling space lanes. A year ago, half of these civilizations were at war with each other, and now they're competing to see who can contribute the most to shared prosperity, Sarah replied. Amazing what happens when survival isn't the primary concern. Dr. Zenkorath approached, her mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was the hive equivalent of laughter. Ambassador Chen, I've just reviewed the latest innovation reports. The Andorian former slave traders have developed a new method of stellar engineering that could revolutionize system development. Former slave traders becoming stellar engineers, Sarah mused. It's almost like people are more creative when they're not spending all their time oppressing each other. How did you know? Krikstal asked suddenly. How did you know that all of this was possible? Sarah's expression became thoughtful. When we first achieved spaceflight, we studied your historical records, your current conflicts, your social structures. From our perspective, you had all the pieces needed for a peaceful, prosperous galaxy. You just needed someone to help you put them together. You make it sound simple. Most solutions are simple once you identify the real problem. The galaxy's problem wasn't lack of resources or incompatible species differences. The problem was that civilizations had normalized behaviors that prevented cooperation. Once we addressed those behaviors, everything else followed naturally. General Thex materialized as a hologram, joining the conversation from his new position as Director of Galactic Conflict Resolution. The transformation of the former warlord into one of humanity's most effective partners still surprised everyone who had known him before. Ambassador, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. A newly discovered species called the Keth Mori appears to be in the early stages of developing spaceflight technology. Our scouts report they have a highly aggressive, conquest-oriented culture. Sarah nodded calmly. Standard first contact protocols, General. Send the cultural analysis team to understand their motivations, the engineering team to assess their technological needs, and the social development team to identify sustainable alternatives to their aggressive tendencies. And if they resist assistance? General Thex asked. Then we'll escalate to the next level of help, Sarah replied with that same gentle smile. We've gotten very good at helping species realize their potential. Krikstal shuddered slightly. He had seen what humanity's escalating levels of help looked like. The destruction cult of Xerion had tried to resist human intervention in their ritual warfare practices. Within 6 months, the same individuals who had spent centuries glorifying death were leading the galaxy's most innovative life extension research projects. They claimed they had simply seen the error of their ways, but Krikstal suspected the process of enlightenment had been considerably more complex. Ambassador, Dr. Zenkorath interjected, There's something I've been wondering about. Your species refers to yourselves as monsters in some of your historical entertainment. Why? Sarah's smile became more complex. carrying depths that reminded observers that humans were perhaps the most successful predatory species in galactic history, because we know what we're capable of when we decide something needs to change. We've spent our entire evolutionary history solving problems that other species considered unsolvable: hostile environments, superior predators, resource scarcity, tribal conflicts, planetary disasters. We've survived and thrived through everything our world could throw at us. And now? Now we're applying those same problem-solving instincts to galactic civilization. The difference is that instead of fighting for survival, we're fighting for everyone's right to thrive. It's the same persistence and creativity that made us apex predators, but directed toward building instead of destroying. Senator Yilnith joined the group via her mobile aquatic unit. "Ambassador, my people have a question that's been troubling them. When will humanity's guidance end? When will you consider your work complete?" Sarah looked out at the bustling space lanes, the peaceful cooperation between former enemies, the unprecedented prosperity spreading through the galaxy. "Senator, our guidance doesn't end. It evolves. Right now we're helping species learn to cooperate and prosper. Eventually you'll all become so effective at solving your own problems that you won't need our active intervention. But humans will always be here watching and ready to help when new challenges arise." "Watching," Krixtal repeated quietly. "It's what we do," Sarah confirmed. "We watch, we learn, we identify problems, and we solve them. It's made us very good at preventing wars, eliminating suffering, and ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to reach their potential." The assembled representatives stood in contemplative silence, watching the greatest transformation in galactic history continue to unfold around them. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy through force or deception. They had conquered it through competence, persistence, and an unwavering commitment to making things better for everyone. They were monsters, in a sense. But they were monsters who had chosen to use their monstrous capabilities for protection rather than predation. The galaxy was safer, more prosperous, and more peaceful than it had ever been, precisely because the most dangerous species in known space had decided that everyone deserved to live without fear. And as new ships arrived carrying representatives from worlds that had never known war, slavery, or scarcity, it became clear that humanity's greatest achievement wasn't their technology or their military might. It was proving that monsters could choose to be gentle, and that gentleness backed by unstoppable force was the most revolutionary concept the galaxy had ever encountered. The day the galaxy realized humans were monsters in disguise was the day everything changed for the better, because these particular monsters had decided that everyone deserved to be safe, prosperous, and free, even if they had to be forced to accept that gift.